uphold international humanitarian law and to say, no, we will not stay silent in the face of war crimes, crimes against humanity, and quite possibly, and when looked at in the broader context of Sri Lanka's history, genocide.
Mm-hmm. When we look at Canada, and a lot of people say, hey, Canada's slow to react on all these things. We can't even get asbestos ban out of Quebec. I mean, they won't even sign off on that being a dangerous idea. We've had 150 troops die in Afghanistan, upholding a government that a lot of people say, hey, how can you support a government that's just committing atrocities against women, against all sorts of other people? But this is sort of probably a broader argument that the Tamils will raise in Canada about we can't just sit idly by. Is this your argument as well?
That's right, yeah. I mean, so if you take the example here, and we have, troops in Afghanistan, and, since 9/11. Now we went there to rebuild the nation there and help the people there, right? I mean, now we are not asking to send the troops to Sri Lanka to help
yeah.
Right? All we want is to put a pressure on the Sri Lankan government through the United Nations, right? Not as a Canada alone, through the Western countries, our friendly countries, right? To put a pressure on the United Nations to at least, and the report is still sitting on the UN Secretary General's desk. I mean, we got to move the report to the Security Council, right, and push for a Walker investigation at the same time and find a lasting solution for the fundamental problems in Sri Lanka. Right.
We're going to take some calls. We're going to come back to a number of different talking points. But for me personally, I mean, we've seen the UN not take action on more issues than they have personally. I don't have a lot of faith that they'll be able to accomplish much. I mean, even look to Rwanda, look to any country that's had strife in the last 2 decades, and they aren't seeming to be the world police that many people might want them to be when it comes to human rights. Our first caller, Pamela in Mississauga. Welcome to the show.
Hi there.
Your thoughts, Tamils in Canada raising awareness about the struggles in Sri Lanka. Would you like to see the government become more involved in raising awareness about potential war crimes, bringing in some trade barriers, these sorts of things?
Yeah, definitely, because if you look at the fact that this is actually a genocide that happened, these people have struggled, they died, so many things have happened, and if no action is taking place, then what are these people going to do? They are still our family. I'm Tamil myself, and I know as a fact, from my experience, that there are so many of my family members still struggling to get food, water, nutrients. Their children are still starving. Orphans are still on the streets trying to get food and important things to live, right? Mm-hmm. And if Canada does not take an action against, all the atrocities that have happened, then what are the Tamil people going to do? They are pretty much going to live in poverty still, right?
Well, a lot of people might take exception. They go, hey, you know what? You immigrated to Canada. You're Canadian now. Let some of that stuff go. Is that a reasonable argument?
No, it's definitely not, because of the fact that even if we are Canadian citizens, I was born and raised here, but I still have the fact that my mother country is Sri Lanka. I'm a Tamil person, and I want the people to be safe. Even if they are not in Canada, they're still humans, right? And they deserve a right to live.
I guess the counter-argument to that is that you're safe within the borders of Canada with our democracy, our Charter of Rights, that you can't import that into Sri Lanka. That doesn't work that way. That must be another frustrating talking point for a lot of people. They go, oh, well, things are great here. We don't face any oppression. There's no genocide. We got to install that over there. It's much more harder thing to accomplish, I would think.
Agreed, but I also believe that things like the rule of law, human rights, justice, these are not Canadian concepts. These are not concepts.
They are, though. They absolutely are. I mean, we literally lost 150 soldiers in Afghanistan, and we're holding up constitutions there that are brutal. Women are arrested for being out after curfew. Women are arrested for having premarital sex. They spend years in jail sometimes.
But I would also argue that as much as they are Canadian values that we honor and cherish, these are also international concepts. And so, human rights don't just exist in Canada. They need to exist all around the world. And as a country that has always had this noble reputation, that has always had this noble tradition of upholding human rights, of standing for people who are oppressed, of course Sri Lanka should be an issue of concern for Canada. And it certainly is, because the Liberal Party, like I mentioned, has already taken a very strong stance. The New Democratic Party has taken a very strong stance calling for an international war crimes inquiry. Civil society organizations across this country, the Canadian Labour Congress, the Canadian Peace Alliance, they've all unequivocally called for an international war crimes inquiry. It's only a matter of time until our government takes the right stance.
Pamela, raised in Canada. I believe she said she was born in Canada. Mother country, Sri Lanka. She feels very committed to that country emotionally. Is this the case for many Tamils, would you say?
Yeah, many Tamils, many young Tamils, this younger generation, they are into this, because this affect their families, their family members, their parents, their brothers, their relatives. They have even relatives in Sri Lanka now. In the Tamils, they are living in Sri Lanka. They are going through all this, they are living in fear. They are still discriminated. I mean, still every corner there you take, the army camps, every corner they have, every corner you turn, right? And there's no free media there. Any media if you want to go to the north and east part of the Sri Lanka, they are not allowed to go there, right? And that war, basically, it was without witness. The way they took happened, and there's no trace for anything. That's what they did.
Let me get your thoughts on this. One of the notions that I've heard is that obviously Canada needs a tremendous amount of immigrants every year. 250,000, federal government's talking about making that 450,000. When you talk about, certain tens of thousands will come in as refugees, but certainly not all. And when you talk about some of those earlier issues stemming back decades ago, limiting education, limiting all these things for Tamils in Sri Lanka, if they don't come over as refugees, the odds of them getting in on our point system are a little bit lower. Do you think that if that is the case, that they don't have the best education in the world, do you think that Canada should be a little bit more open arms when it comes to accepting people from Sri Lanka?
Again, I think this goes back to Canada's tradition. When the boat people from Vietnam came, we were open to them. The boat people came in Halifax in the 1980s, we were open to them. We haven't been so open the last few years when boat people have come, but I do believe that Canadians generally, have a warm heart, and Canadians have open arms, and they believe that refugees, have a place here in this country. And we are a country that's multicultural. We have people here from many different nations all across the world, and it's only made our country stronger. So I think
there was a lot of outrage when the boat arrived on the West Coast with a lot of Tamils on board, and I heard a lot of immigration experts say the anger's unwarranted. We need these people, and they need us right now. This isn't an anger issue. This isn't a border crashing issue. This is not the war that goes on politically between Mexico and the States at their border. This is a totally different scenario.
Absolutely.
We want to go to Sam in Brampton as our next caller. Sam, how you doing?
Hi, good. How are you?
Pretty good.
Good. Okay, I'm not originally from Sri Lanka. I'm different part of the Asia. I was, that 2 years ago, it was affected by the gardeners blocking. Then my neighbors are Tamils. I always talk about, they say this. Then a few months ago, my neighbor brought me the channel for video to watch. As soon as I watch a video, I go back to home, I said, you know what, you should block the 412, because that amount of people killed, raped, the 40,000 people in 3 months slaughtered. So this is the issues going on all the time. Then he came back, he said, you know what, his brother and sister, he don't know, 2.5 years after the war, he don't know they're alive or dead. There are 6,000 people still in the jail. They don't know their names. So government never released a name or anything outside the people. Even human IRC or in relative, they don't know the name. 6,000 people name is 2.5 years is against international law and humanitarian law. So now, then other time he's saying sometime this is true. These things, all EU, and UK and US, always they raise the voice against the war crime. You need to be war crime done, but Canada still slide. They never ask anything. The war crime investigation look like they're working with. They never say any word so far. So I don't know why. Just now, I think the media is after Channel 4 came out. So all the international, like UK, Australia, India, and France, New Zealand, they broadcast the channel. Thank you so much to you doing broadcasting the channel for now. But Canadians, any other media, they never broadcast. So I don't know why.
Sam, did you say you were involved in the Gardner protest, or your neighbor was?
No. I affected, I couldn't move to the highway. Today I went to downtown, so I couldn't go to downtown because the Gardner blocked.
We got to take a quick break. We'll come back to that moment on the Gardner when I think a lot of people in the GTA and across Canada were like, what is this big issue that they blocked the Gardner over? We'll go back to that moment when we return. You're watching Ben Mercer live on Rogers TV. Tonight on Ben Mercer Live, we're talking about raising awareness about Tamils in Sri Lanka. We have two experts in studio who are lobbying the Canadian government as well as the UN to open a war crimes investigation, or further a war crimes investigation into what's happening in Sri Lanka, specifically over the last 2-3 years. Our previous caller and phone lines are open. Do you think the Canadian government should do more to help with either policy or raising awareness about the plight of people in Sri Lanka, Tamils, of course, namely? We want to hear your thoughts. 905-848-LIVE. That's 905-848-5483. We were just talking about, of course, that, I think for decades people are going to recall that moment on the Gardner about a year or so ago when the Gardner was shut down by a whole bunch of Tamil protesters, and, you had the attention of millions of people across the GTA, across the province, and, of course, nationally going, what is this? We've heard Tamil this, Tamil that. It was this wonderful protest that got a great deal of attention, maybe didn't raise awareness about the broader picture and some of the nuances about what they were trying to raise awareness about, but that did so much to raise the profile about the Tamil community in Canada. Would you agree with that?
I think it certainly did. And when we look at what happened that day, on Mother's Day, on the Gardner, I think it can be best described as a collective ethos of frustration. For 4 months, starting in January, there was an intense campaign of shelling, of indiscriminate bombings. We know that hospitals were being bombed. We know that no fire zones that were declared by the government, were then being bombed themselves after civilians had huddled into them, looking for safety. We know that people were being shot point blank range. We know that political prisoners, were being executed. And all of this was happening without any witnesses at all, because again, the UN was kicked out.
Well, that's what I was just going to say. Canadians didn't know about it because the mainstream media just didn't have the footage. I mean, you have the reports, you have some radio reports, but nothing clear enough where people can go, wow, that's a live atrocity happening right now. We could do something about it. And that's why I feel that even now people are like, what exactly happened? What exactly? And so raising awareness about the Tamil community in Canada is very important.
Yes, again, that's why, according to the CBC estimate, about 100,000 people on the road, like a human, they made a human chain there, right? And all the protests and everything for the months in Ottawa, right? And to protect these, to save these 40,000 lives we lost in the last few weeks of the war, right? We could have saved those 40,000 lives, right, had the international community, taken any action there.
And we'll get to our next caller, Deepa, in just a moment. Another point, and it might be a point of interest for international politics when we talk about taking down bad guys for war crimes. If the country was going through bad times, it becomes easier. I think that because trade partners and Sri Lanka their economy is doing very well, exceptionally well, one of the fastest growing economies in the world. I feel like there might be international reluctance to sort of stir things up. That's my personal opinion, but I feel that's probably echoed by many people. When you see how much benefit they have for the rest of the world, when you talk about rubber, when you talk about coffee, when you talk about all these other exports that they have that are just pouring over all these different borders. Our next caller is Deepa. Deepa, welcome to the show.
Hi, how are you today?
Pretty good.
Yes, my point is, you just touched that subject right now when you're talking to them. When the Canadian government and the Canadian media shed so much light on what's happening in the other countries that has their own trouble and the political conflicts in their country, just like recently the Libya and the Syria, when they show the plight of the people. Even yesterday they had a show when they showed about 40 people burnt, and they were burnt by the grenade blast by the Libyan retreating army. Then they could show all these things and bring the plight of those people into the light of the Canadian public. Why can't we also do the same, and so that the Canadian public understand what's really happening in Sri Lanka, or what really happened that has brought the Tamil community to such an outcry?
A lot of people would be opposed to seeing Canada, become aggressive about its involvement in Sri Lanka. But ideally, Deepa, what would you like to see the Canadian government do for Sri Lanka at this point?
Right now, I want them to voice out, because outside Sri Lanka, Canada has the largest population of Tamil community. And I think we should bring out our frustrations and throw more light on the war crimes that happen in Sri Lanka, and bring justice to those people who are still struggling to keep their life. alive. They are not even struggling for the basic needs. They are just struggling to keep